Yeah, my name's Zach.
Yeah. My name's
Saheel.
Saheel. Yeah, sorry.
We're representing on open shelter space.
Yeah. So in 2018, the City of Toronto Ombudsman issued a report on the SSHA, the Shelter Support and Housing Administration. It's basically the organization within the City of Toronto that manages all of the affairs for all of the sort of social housing that they sort of look over. And as part of that, in that report, there was a chart, the one that you see here, where they found that they want to illustrate that on a given night, there was many spaces in the shelter system that were being left open. These spaces, like beds that were available for shelter seekers that were not being used. Right? There's a lot of unused capacity. Every night, the shelter system is very full, but not completely. We made plots for the current data and compared to 2 years past, and we found that even at a system that was sort of at 95% capacity, there was consistently night per night beds in emergency respite shelters that were being unused.
So the problem is there are unused shelter spaces, and this chart, this super complicated diagram, illustrates kind of why shelter spaces go unused some nights. If you are looking for shelter in the City of Toronto, there are three ways that you're supposed to find it. The main ways you call what's called the central intake shelter phone line, which is manned by a few people in a call center. There's also the Streets to Homes Referral Center, which is a physical location at 129 Peter Street here in Toronto. And then the other ways you can call 311, but they'll refer you back to the central intake phone line. All of these services find out which shelters have space in the same way by making phone calls. They call around to shelters, and then they internally kind of log when they get off the phone with the shelter staff how much space that shelter has left. And these numbers can change pretty quickly in the case of what we'll discuss are called emergency shelters, which can have their populations increase and decrease sometimes at a pretty rapid pace. But also these phone calls take a lot of time, and so a call to the central take phone line can take an hour 45 minutes sometimes, and at the end of that call you might not even get a space. This is bad for somebody seeking shelter, but this is also a huge time sink for shelter staff who have to call this phone line when somebody shows up at their shelter is full, and they have to refer them to another location.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So the solution for this, basically, that we've come up with, was to collect all live occupancy data from the shelters and display it on a map that is available to everybody. The idea was that we give shelters a small hardware device akin to a people counter that you'd see at some event. As they do head count, as they do occupancy checks, they can update the count at a given shelter, and this then syncs with a map on the web.
Oh, yeah, we have a couple of the devices here tonight if people want to come and see them later. We'll do a demo as a part of the presentation.
So for context in particular about the shelter system in Toronto as a whole, the city operates many different kinds of shelters. There's the sort of transitional shelters that you'll see that are sort of like motel based or hotel based for families or refugees of various kinds. So there's also these sort of emergency shelters, the ones that are there kind of for a short-term basis for individuals wanting to come up to get out of the cold, like when bad weather events happen. The kind of one-offs where people can check in for the night. They can seek warmth, shelter, and food, and then they exit the next day. So the solution that we've come up with really focuses on that second piece, we really focus on the sort of emergency housing piece of this. So that's respite sites, warming centers, and drop-in centers. It's kind of like the room-based versus the hotel-based, or bed-based versus room-based shelters. One thing that was interesting and maybe little bit sad was that Toronto has more shelter beds per capita than any other Canadian city. And sort of as a generally speaking, like the problem of social housing is one that's been downloaded from the federal level to the provincial level down to the municipal level over the years. And a lot of the funding that sort of comes with those programs has not been downloaded as well. And so we've seen a rise in this issue of homelessness over the past, especially starting since the 90s. And we think that this is a problem that is fixable because at one point it wasn't as prevalent as it is today.
Mm-hmm. So we thought it might be fun to walk folks here through a bit of the history of the project, since it's been at Civic Tech for quite a while and it's been through a few different people's hands. The project started back in 2018 when that ombudsman report happened, actually from a person who worked for the city of Toronto in the data visualization department. They put together a quick project called Shelter Map and then promptly passed it off to Civic Tech, where a small group of volunteers formed and created a project from Shelter Map that they called Base Count, which was pretty sweet. It was a way to live broadcast occupancy data from shelters like what we've described, and they did it with a web app that you would use from your phone. So we've got some fun pictures of what that looked like back in 2018 when we were working on that. And then here's a quick picture of what that web app looked like. Had a management interface where organizations could actually manage and add their own shelter staff to be able to publish occupancy from their own phones. It was pretty feature rich. Unfortunately, around November, this project got in contact with the shelter administration, and it sort of got lost in the bureaucracy of trying to partner with the city. The city's response was that they were working on a parallel solution to this like broadcast live occupancy data, and it was going to go live in 6 to 8 months on their own shelter management information system. That caused the project to dissolve. In 2023 today, we know that isn't quite true, that they were making a parallel solution. But anyway, the project dissolved a little bit and kind of just left it with me for a few years. I didn't have the skills to maintain the web app that had been built. I wasn't a Rails developer, not yet anyway. But I had experience with electronics, so this project kind of turned into what it is today, a little bit of an Internet of Things project and a bit of a web project. We by early 2020, we had a first working prototype of what we've brought to show you guys all today, which was just a simple electronic device and a static website with a leaflet, and the backend was in Firebase. It wasn't very scalable, but it worked. And then in 2020, we had some new members join. Shubi, who's here tonight, and also Kai, who was a full stack web developer and helped us build out a web service. So we've got some fun pictures of us working on the electronics over the years. And then this is us coding the web service and an earlier prototype of what our little counter device looked like. Yeah, and then here we are today. So we wanted to share some lessons that we learned over keeping this project alive over 5 years. Expect member attrition, which is, I guess, important to keep in your heart, but also to keep coming back to Civic Tech. I think that having more members in a project is a good analog for the health of the project. And if there hadn't been so many people who had touched this project, I don't think it would have lived the 5 years that it has. The next, right, yeah, to demonstrate how many people have touched this project, I wanted to just give a quick thanks to the previous maintainers of this project, Matthew T, Andrew C, Kai X, and also the previous members of this project who contributed in ways such as research and coding and design. Shubi, who's here tonight, Philip, Marjorie, Vivian, Delaney, and Joey. If you guys are watching this video on YouTube, or you're here somewhere and I can't see you, thank you so much for helping keep this project alive. And it's not in sync anymore. Uh-oh. How do you fix it when it doesn't update? Oh yeah, okay, there we go. Our next lesson is to do constant research. Even over COVID, we tried to keep our research up to date, but COVID made it hard to especially get into shelters and also keep contacts alive. Contacts that we had, even as recent as a year ago, have dried up. They've moved on to other jobs, especially in the shelter. In shelters, staff turnover can be pretty quick. Also, the landscape changes. That's something that we're dealing with right now. Our research, we don't know how accurate it is anymore. A lot of it's from as long as 4 years ago. And so if you continue to do research with the people who you are building for, and continue, this part's really important, to like build the thing really quick so you can get it into the hands of the person who's actually going to use it, because everything up until that point is conjecture. Then your project, I think, will go much smoother than it may otherwise. And then the final point that we wanted to give to you guys is to never give up. As long as one person stays with the project who still believes in it and is willing to do something like come here to Civic Tech to pitch it and find people to join them and help them continue to build it, the project is not dead. And yeah, I think that's an important thing for us all to keep in our hearts as we work on projects like this. So how does this work in practice? Our research suggests very strongly that shelters have to do a really important thing called headcount. They do this for two reasons. One of them is to do regular health checks. There can be health complications that happen when somebody's staying at a shelter, especially emergency sites during like a cold weather snap. You have to do regular checks on your clients to make sure they're doing all right. And the other important reason is shelters have to make sure they're not breaking fire code. And so during our research, we found that shelters will count how many people are in their space as often as every 20 minutes. Shelter staff are really busy. We wouldn't think to create something that will add another thing in their work, in their daily work that they would have to do. But this is something that they're already doing. They're just not publishing this data. And so our plan is to try and make it as easy as possible for them to publish this data and send it off to the internet. It can become useful to other shelter staff. And then the other half of that is when somebody shows up at a shelter that you're working reception at, and your shelter is full. You can't break fire code and let them in, but you also can't send them back out into the cold. You have to find another space for them. This is a huge time sink for shelter staff, and a pain point that we hope to alleviate. We hope with our tool, at a glance, you'll be able to see which places have space and which don't. Red space means full, green space means empty. This is like the inverse of what happens in real life, but this is roughly how it's supposed to work. When you click on a map, you get a pop-up with a bit of information like which populations the shelter serve. Is it male only? Is it female only? Is it 24 hours? Can you bring your pet? And also the phone number, so you can call and actually make sure that there's really a space for your client before you send them over there. And also, we want to show you what we're working for real.
Sure. So okay, like I guess what I'll do then is a little bit.
So if it is live on the internet, although the data on there isn't real from shelters, we're still trying to organize demos with shelters to maybe get this rolled out. If you at your home or people in this room, if you navigate to OpenShelter.space, you'll see a map like this one here. And we built these small counter devices. It's not very obvious in this brightly lit room, but they also light up the color of like how much space is left, which is fun. Anyway, as you turn the dial, because you just did a head count, you did a wellness check, and you're like, oh, we're now completely full. You turn the dial to make that thing goes red, and oh, the map updates. Whoa, it works for real. Yeah. You also notice there are two graphs here, one for head count, one for bed count. Shelters have a maximum fire code, but that often is a higher number than how many beds that they have, so we're tracking them separately. Yeah.
So okay.
Oh, it's out of sync again. Oh, no, this is my fault actually. Oh, there we go.
So we'll sort of end off by talking about the state of the project right now. We have a working prototype, and we want to get it like into the hands of people in the shelter system. The research that we did that informed this project initially is like out of date, and so like we want, like, if you work at a shelter program in the GTA, if you know somebody that does, if you interface with the SSHA at all through any means, please like speak to us. Reach out to us. Like, we want to talk to you. If you are if you have a willingness to kind of help us cold call shelters and other people in the shelter system and get continually rejected, please, please talk to us, because we need, that's all that we've been doing the past couple of weeks. And there's always technical work to do, on the web dev side, with the device itself. So if you have any technical skills with embedded dev or web dev, anything, please talk to us.
Before we end, I missed this earlier, but Birun and Sophie are here as well.
Yeah.
Thank you, you guys. These guys have also been a part of this project lately, helping with research, and Sophie's been great about helping with outreach. I think Birun's working on a demo slide for us. Yeah, the project is more than just the two of us.
Yeah.
Feel free to come talk to any of us. So.